So what we have also are criminal acts, not in the sense of crimes, but the criminal punishable acts that are possible are numerous. Actually, they are all the things with regards to the finances of the parties and the donations. So also that part of the candidates' obligations. If you violate those provisions in the law, then there is a possibility that you may be prosecuted and have to get a fine for up to 10,000 guilders, even detention of 3 months, or a combination thereof. And even also disqualification of holding certain posts of offices as mentioned in the penal code. This is, of course, a far-reaching thing, especially also because it's not qualified as a crime in the national ordinance, but only as a misdemeanor. But it's still a punishable act, and it will not be nice on your record. I would like to show you two graphs. One is the matter of the donation registrations that we received from the candidates, and what we can see, last time we had 90 candidates that participated in the elections, and they were all supposed, of course, to submit their donations within a month after the elections. And what do we see? It's if you see this graph, is that it is already a few weeks down the road that before the first 4 people submit their registration of donations, and it is not till the last day that the people are really coming to the office, and you see there a big peak on that shows how that works out. We also have here a graph that shows from how does it work with donations of to candidates of parties. So we see that it's a very big spread of the donations that were collected by the candidates of the respective political parties last time. This does not show the donations of the parties themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman, for your enlightening presentation. I would like to let the audience know that there will be an opportunity for questions after the second presentation. We will now move to our second keynote speaker for the evening, Mr. Jason Rogers. Mr. Rogers completed his law degree in 2004 at the University of Amsterdam, specializing in international criminal law and criminology. He subsequently became a lecturer at the University for Applied Science in Amsterdam, where he taught criminal law and administrative law. In 2007, Mr. Rogers furthered his education by obtaining another master's degree in U.S. comparative law at the University of Florida, USA. Since that time, Mr. Rogers has been practicing law in St. Martin. He is currently the chairman of the Central Voting Bureau and is actively involved in the community and serves as the vice president of the St. Martin Red Cross. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jason Rogers.
The Central Voting Bureau is an independent institution enacted by the government, of course, in order to execute all the procedures as in accordance with the law of the election. Now, if we look to ask ourselves, what are those procedures? It starts from the beginning. A lot of people would not notice the fact that we are working months from before in order to make September 26 actually move smoothly. We started actually sometime back in March, if I'm not mistaken, with the civil registry. Actually, we had a couple of meetings with the civil registry because the civil registry is actually dealing with the execution of a lot of work that the Central Voting Bureau does. And I must say we have Ms. Kathy Snyder has actually assisted us very good for the last couple of months. Now, we have the general function of the Voting Bureau is to ensure that the entire election process, which includes the postulation, the voting, and the determination of the outcome of the election. Now, a lot of people would think that after September 26th that our job is done. It is far from finished because actually then it continues. It's definitely going to continue up until more or less October 17th. But I will get to that in a few and actually explain exactly what we do after the election day. The other way. Of course, I'm standing here tonight, and a lot of people probably have seen and heard about me in the news for the last couple of weeks. But it is not only me. I have a team behind of me as well, or not behind, but next to me, as a matter of fact. A team consisting of Tamara Richardson, which is the vice chair lady. We also have Cindy Matic as a member, the Bus from the Bush as a member, Anastasia Baker as a member, and we have two very good extraordinary members, Nerissa de la Rosa, and as well as Patrice Gums. Now, the law states that we need to have 5 members at the Central Voting Bureau and 2 extraordinary members. How are we actually appointed? If we look at the legislation, it states that there is a benoemingscommissie. Now, that committee that appoint members consists of 3 members, which is the vice chairperson of the Council of Advice, which is here tonight, Mrs. Mavis Brooks-Solomon. We also have the president or the chairperson of the General Audit Chamber, as well as the president of the Joint Court of Justice of all 6 islands. And the members are basically appointed based on their credentials. Postulation Day. Postulation Day is determined in a national decree upon the recommendation of the Minister of General Affairs. We look at Article 21 of the Electoral Ordinance, and you will see exactly how it is stipulated. Now, all political parties that are registered at the Electoral Council, they are the ones that are allowed to submit a list of candidates on Postulation Day. As you see, that was August 8th, which is about 3 weeks ago, approximately. August 8th, those parties were allowed to submit a list of candidates from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. That can be found in Article 22 of the Electoral Ordinance. Now, it's not only a list of candidates that you will submit. You have to submit supporting documents. Now, what are those supporting documents? You need to have a consent form. You also need to have a declaration from the chairman of the Central Voting Bureau that that candidate is an eligible voter. In addition to that, you need to have a declaration of the receiver's office that an amount of 2,000 guilders is paid. Now, it's a little cryptic, but also take into consideration, every political party that wants to contest in an election needs to pay an amount of 2,000 guilders. Now, it is not the political party that pays the 2,000 guilders, but it's actually a voter would need to put the 2,000 guilders on the name of another person as well, or it could be a candidate. The law says that the political party that has obtained 1 or more seat would be refunded of that 2,000 guilders. So if you do not get a seat, you do not get your money back. Which is kind of how you're being punished twice. So you're not getting a seat, you cannot go in Parliament, and you do not get your money back. So parliamentarians, that may be something, if you're elected, that you may want to change. Because getting punished twice is not really a nice thing. In addition, you have to submit a picture. The picture of your number one candidate on the list, it needs to be in black and white, and there are specific measurements. Now, I can tell you during the examination meeting that we had with the Voting Bureau, we have a ruler, and we're literally checking to see if the picture is basically, if it meets the requirements, the measurements. And in addition, you also need to submit proof of registration at the Electoral Council, and also proof that you're allowed to use the abbreviation that Mr. Hoffman was just basically mentioning. The day after postulation day is the endorsement day. Now, how do you come with that amount of signatures? Last election, the endorsement day, we had 146 signatures. The party needed to be endorsed by 146 signatures. How do you reach to that amount? It is 1% of the amount of valid votes cast at the previous election. And also, parties that have obtained one or more seats during the previous election, they will be exempted from that endorsement requirement. And I just mentioned we examined the list. We examined the list. It has to be 3 days after the endorsement day. Those lists are deeply scrutinized. We have to check to see if the supporting documents are all in order. And abbreviation. The abbreviation that Mr. Hoffman just mentioned, it is very imperative that you use the abbreviation that has been actually allowed by the Electoral Council for you to use. If you do not have that correct abbreviation, it can ultimately lead to declaring that list invalid. That is not something that the Voting Bureau actually wants to do, but it is actually something that we would have to do because it's stipulated in the law. If you do not use your abbreviation or your reference, or if you use the incorrect one, that we have no other choice than to declare the list invalid. Now, the name of a candidate is not allowed to appear on one or more lists. Now, imagine the task that the Voting Bureau actually has to face with. In order, we have how many? 126 candidates for this parliamentary election. So we have to go through all lists in order to make sure that every person that is on the list, that they only appear once on that list. Now, in the event that your name is mentioned on more than one list, we have no other choice than to basically strike your name from both lists or all lists that your name appears on. And that is not something that we would want to do. That's something we have to do based on the law. After we have that meeting of examining the list, the law prescribes that we would have to inform the political parties a day after, so immediately after, of the discrepancies. We had that meeting, if I'm not mistaken, on August 12th, which was on a Friday, and it's notably so that on the Saturday we would have had to inform the political parties of the discrepancies, but a Saturday, the law prescribed in Article 133, if that day falls in a weekend, or if it falls on a holiday, that it goes automatically to the following workday or business day. Hence, on August 15th, we informed all the political parties of the various discrepancies that they had. And they will have a period of 3 days in order to remedy those discrepancies. Right after that, the 3-day period, the day after, we would have a public hearing in connection with the validity of the list and maintaining of candidates on that list, which we had on Friday, August 19th. After that, we will have the numbering of the list. Now, before going into that, how that is done, the law also prescribed, though, when we go back to the following slide, because after that meeting that we had on August 19th, every eligible voter has the opportunity to basically file an appeal before the court in the event that you are not in agreement with the decision. I cannot imagine that no one have been reading the papers for the last days, and I'm pretty much convinced that you guys are aware that an appeal has been filed. We at the Central Voting Bureau, we can only welcome that in the sense that it is democracy. We do not decide only by ourselves. If in the event that you're not in agreement with a decision, you have the opportunity to file your appeal by the judge, before the court, and that has been done. The law also prescribes that in the event an appeal has been filed, that the whole public hearing in regards to the numbering of the list and also the assignments of colors, that has to be halted. It cannot take place. Now, with the particular appeal that has been signed, it was because of one name being removed from a list. However, it would not have any influence on assigning a name, a color to the list, or even numbering the list. So a lot of people were asking, why is it that that public hearing could not continue? It could not, even though it would not have any effect. It could not continue because if you look at the letter of the law, that does not make any kind of distinction whatsoever. It states, in the event an appeal has been filed, then you cannot continue with the hearing. Hence the reason that we did not continue with the hearing as yet. Now, that is something that Parliament, the legislators, what they can do is they can think about wanting to revise that and to include that in the event that there is that it would not have any effect on the numbering of the list or the assignment of colors, that the hearing can continue. The idea of the legislator behind this particular article is, in the event the Central Voting Bureau would have declared a list invalid. Because if the list is declared invalid and the person goes to court and the court is in agreement with them, then you cannot continue with a hearing of the numbering of the list. Because how can you continue with a hearing of the numbering of the list and later on you have already numbered all lists, but later on that the judge says, no, this list has to be, can also contend in the election. So therefore, you cannot continue with the numbering of the list until the judge has taken a decision. Now, it's a public hearing, and how do you determine which list gets which number? Fate decides. It is not something that we do. Fate decides, so we will have two jars, one jar with all the names of the political party, and one jar with all the numbers of the amount of political parties that will be contending. And then out of one jar, we take one name of the political party, and we take out of the other jar a number. And it's all done transparent so everybody can actually see what is taking place. In terms of colors, during the hearing, a color is assigned to a political party as well. Now, the law basically states that in the event that you have participated in the previous parliamentary elections with a particular color, that color will be assigned to you. For new political parties, if it is that they would want to a certain color, and if it is that there's more than one party that would want that color, then we would have to go into what we call a loading, and fate will decide that too. If we look at the previous elections, last time, 2014, there were two political parties, that was the SRP and also the US party that wanted the color blue, and fate decided that. The polling stations. We have 20 polling stations here in St. Martin. The country is divided by decree in voting districts. Now, how do we come up with that? The legislation says that you cannot have more than 1,500 voters in each polling station. Hence the reason that you will see that certain polling stations probably would have 1,499 probably, and certain polling stations will have a lower amount. But it depends on how the country is divided into districts. But you cannot have more than 15 voters in a polling district, in a district. We have, at each polling stations, we have 3 members and 2 extraordinary members as well. And the time to vote is from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m., Article 44. Now, don't kill me for this one, but you do not get 4 hours to vote, as a lot of people actually think. You only get 2 hours, not even 2 hours. It is so that in the event that you cannot vote outside of your working hours, then is when your employer will need to award you with maximum 2 hours to go out and vote. So if you're working from 8 in the morning until, let's say, 4 in the afternoon, you are not entitled to 2 hours to vote, because from 4 in the afternoon until 8 in the evening, you have the opportunity to go and vote. Or if you are going to work from 3 in the afternoon until 11 at night, you vote from 8 until 2:59. So you have time to go out and vote. And I would want to encourage everyone, do not wait until the last moment, 7:30 in the evening, to go out and vote. You have the entire day to go out and vote, so cast your vote and make your vote count. What is an invalid vote? We look at Article 81. It says, use of any ballot other than is allowed by the Electoral Ordinance or by virtue thereof. Or even a blank ballot, that is now considered an invalid vote. So if you go into the polling station and say, I do not agree with these politicians, I am just going to give a blank ballot, that is an invalid vote. Or more than one slot is colored in red, that would be an invalid vote as well. Or if you use another color pencil other than red. Last election, when we were examining the invalid votes, we've seen people actually voted and used a blue pen. Now that's invalid. Or if you have additions to the ballot. They have certain voters, when they go out and vote, they want to show their loyalty, and they will put the candidate's name, I love you, and then mentioning the candidate's name. We have seen that. We have seen stuff where people would actually voice their sentiments of how exactly they feel, and they put that on the ballot. Do not do that, because that will make your vote invalid. In addition to that, each ballot would have the signature of the chairperson of the voting bureau. So then it's when you're also going to see if you have a ballot without the signature of the chairperson, then that ballot would be invalid. Now, it's all about the seats. You go out and vote, but how do we actually allocate those seats? Because that's what it all comes down to. Now, for the purpose of tonight, what I've done is that we have 6 political parties: Party Lion, Party Wolf, Tiger, Panther, Cat, and Leopard. They're all like cats, aren't they? But anyways, Lion got, in total we had 14,451 votes, valid votes that were casted. Lion got 1,636, Wolf got 4,024, Tiger 6,157, Panther 2,334, Cat 131, and Leopard 169. How do we calculate the seats? How many seats do we have in Parliament? We have 15 seats in Parliament. So what we're going to do to get a quota, we're going to divide 14,051 by 15 seats. And then we get 963.4. That's the quota. That's how much you need to get a seat. So what we're going to do, we're going to see how many times does 963.4 fits in this amount. It fits 1.698 times in this amount. And then we do the same exercise by the others: 4.1676, 6.390, 2.422, 0.35, and 0.175. Now, we look at the number before the dot. We said this fits 1.698 times in this amount, so that is 1 seat. Lion got 1 seat. Wolf gets 4. Tiger gets 6. Panther gets 2. This does not fit. This amount does not fit in the 131 and also not in the 169. So that's 0 seats and 0 seats. Let's count the amount of seats now. Once we count 1 plus 4 plus 6 plus 2, we come out to 13. But how many seats do we have in Parliament? We have 15. So we are 2 seats short. Those 2 seats, those we call the residual seats. How do we actually now go and award those residual seats? We just cannot give them to anybody. They have to be done fairly, and the law also prescribes how it's done. So what we do is we give each party a fictitious seat. So here we see Lion had 1. We're going to give Lion another seat, which brings Lions to 2. Wolf gets an additional seat, brings Wolf from 4 to 5, Tiger from 6 to 7, and Panther from 2 to 3. So guess what? Tiger is going to get the first residual seat. Hence the reason I have the 1 here. So then we go back over it again. This was a fictitious seat, so it goes from 2, it goes back down to 1. The 5 goes back down to the original 4. But hey, Tiger got the residual seat. They're going to stay at 7. And Panther goes down to 3 to 2 again to the original seats that they got. When we count this now, 1 plus 4 plus 7 plus 2 brings us to 14. How many seats we have in Parliament? 15. So we're 1 short. So we have to go back over the same exercise again. When we go back over, we're going to give everybody a fictitious seat. So from 1 to 2, 4 to 5, 7 to 8, 2 to 3. Then we go and look again to see this amount divided by the amount of seats, the fictitious ones as well, brings us down to 818, 804.8, 769.6, and 778. Who has the highest amount here? Lion. So Lion gets the second residual seat. So we see Lion gets 2, and then we go back down again from 5 to 4, from 8 to 7, and from 3 to 2. When we count these up, 2 plus 4 plus 7 plus 2, bingo. We got 15 seats, and those are the 15 seats that we have in Parliament. Now, I'm pretty sure there's some smart people out there saying, but why do we have to do this again? Because by the first time we already saw, after saying, well, listen, 879.57, then the second highest one would be Lion. So why we have to do that? But the law basically prescribed that we have to do it that way, hence the reason that we do it. Is this clear, by the way? Yeah? Ladies and gentlemen, this is how we allocate seats after an election. At the end of the day, this is what we're doing it for too, in order to see who gets, how the seats are awarded. Now, election night, that is not the final results. The results need to be validated. Article 87, and it says, the 5th day after election, the Central Voting Bureau would have to convene a public meeting in order to validate the results. And that public meeting is not a time that we would want to have it in the sense of say, okay, you know what, 10 o'clock? No, the law prescribes 10 o'clock in the morning. At that meeting, you will have all eligible, or not all, but any eligible voter is allowed to come to that meeting and basically file an objection and say, well, listen, I feel that certain polling stations should be recounted or the invalid vote should be recounted, but they need to have valid reasons in stating why they would want that to happen. Then the Voting Bureau will take that into consideration. We will then adjourn and deliberate and come back with our decision. After the validation of the results, we see the results. Within 3 days after that, we will have to basically let the elected candidates know that they have been elected into Parliament. And the elected candidates will have to confirm within a period of 5 days that they have received my letter stating that they have been elected into Parliament. And then he or she would also need to inform the chairman of the Voting Bureau if he or she accepts her election. And once receipt of acceptance, the chairman informs the Parliament. So what I will do is then inform the chairperson of Parliament, well, person X has accepted his or her election into Parliament. The letters of credence, so the credentials, should be submitted to Parliament by the candidate within 3 weeks of the notification of the chairman to Parliament. An elected candidate will inform the Parliament of any open betrekingen. So if you have any kind of public positions or whatever it is you would also need to inform Parliament of that. And Parliament will examine the letter of credence and decide whether or not that person will indeed be elected to Parliament. And as per the law, the new Parliament will be inaugurated on October 31st, 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, make use of your democratic right, a right that everyone has been fighting many years long to actually be able to execute. So why should you go without even executing that right? It's your voice. It's your way to determine what you want to happen in your country. You have that position, that right. So I will say use it to go out and vote on September 26th. Thank you.